Good morning. Thank you for watching Amir 5858. I'm Amir Goodman. I'm thankful to all international news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Asian, Canadian, African, and Australian channels, and of course AFP, AP, and Reuters news agencies. Now the headlines: Louisiana State 10 Commandments, school and colleges. Differences between Israeli military government and American government. Republican disinformation. Russian agreements with Vietnam. More air defense missiles for Ukraine against Russia. Dutch Prime Minister will be the NATO chief. Trial of Russian-American woman in Russia. No American should go to Russia. Tropical storm Alberto landed in New Mexico. Eastern U.S. in heat wave. Sanctions against drug cartel. Actor Donald Sutherland has died. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrials up, Nasdaq and S&P 500 down. Now the news in detail.
On this Thursday night, escaping at a moment's notice. The race to get out of a town in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Looked in my rearview mirror, and you can see all the smoke.
The strangers opening their homes to evacuees and the province's plea for help. Deadly heat, the rising consequences of Saudi Arabia's searing temperatures. Manitoba narrows the search of a landfill for two missing Indigenous women.
This is about a compassionate mission.
And the plans to help victims' families heal. Plus, he was known as a sensitive, serious, and smart actor.
Well, I can find something in everybody to play.
Celebrating Canadian Donald Sutherland and the impact he had beyond the screen.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. On the Navaz is away. On the News Hour tonight, Louisiana becomes the first state to require the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom. We take a closer look at the implications.
We have so many religious differences, and yet we have managed to negotiate, live together, peaceful coexistence, mainly because we've kept the government out of the religion business.
Divisions between Israel's military and political leadership, and a diplomatic spat with the U.S. lay bare rifts over the war in Gaza. And how Republican disinformation is sowing doubts about the legitimacy of the 2024 election.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the News Hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin picked up more support today during his trip to Asia, signing a series of deals with Vietnam. But his visit to the region is as much about the war in Ukraine as it is about bilateral agreements. Earlier this week, Putin was in North Korea, where he and Kim Jong-un pledged to come to each other's aid. That led South Korea to say it would consider supplying arms to Ukraine. Putin told reporters in Vietnam today that the country's leaders would be making a big mistake if they did so. Meantime, in Washington, Senate Republicans and Democrats banded together in pushing to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism.
In my view, this message to the world, because Russia deserves to be in this small, selective club of atrocity-committing killers.
Also today, the White House said it would redirect deliveries of air defense missiles to Ukraine instead of sending them to other U.S. allies. A spokesperson described the decision as, quote, difficult but necessary given Russia's ongoing attacks on Ukraine. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is all but certain to be the next NATO Secretary General after his last rival for the job, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, withdrew from the race. Rutte would succeed current NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg in October. He's a longtime supporter of Ukraine's war effort against Russia. Rutte's selection would allow NATO leaders to put up a united front when they gather in Washington in July to mark the 75th anniversary of the military alliance. The trial of a Russian-American woman accused of treason started today in Moscow. Ksenia Karolina was born in Russia but lives in Los Angeles. She was arrested in February while visiting family in Russia. Russian authorities accuse her of raising money for Ukraine, but her boyfriend says it was a single donation of about $50. In a statement, he told the NewsHour, she is full of compassion and donated a small amount to a U.S. nonprofit to help people in need. She is not an activist for any cause. Carolina faces up to 20 years if convicted. Today, a State Department spokesperson warned all Americans to avoid going to Russia.
You run a tremendous risk by traveling to Russia of being detained, being imprisoned, being convicted. And so we continue to make clear to every American, do not, for any reason, travel to Russia.
Carolina's trial is taking place behind closed doors in the same court where Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich will face espionage charges when his trial starts next week. Tropical storm Alberto was downgraded to a tropical depression today as the first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season made its way inland over Mexico. Alberto brought heavy rain and sustained winds of 35 miles per hour. 3 people have died. Parts of southern Texas were also hard hit. Rain is also in the forecast in New Mexico, where 2 massive wildfires have burned more than 35 square miles and destroyed 1,400 buildings. At least 2 people there have died. Residents are hoping the rain will help the firefighting efforts, which have been unrelenting.
It's been nonstop planes, nonstop sirens. It almost felt like being in the middle of a war zone with all the smoke surrounding on the calm area right here in the middle.
Meantime, the eastern Great Lakes and New England baked today under this week's unrelenting heat wave. The Mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley are next. The National Weather Service expects heat index readings to surpass 100 degrees in many areas, possibly setting new records. Crew members from the cargo ship that crashed into Baltimore's Key Bridge in March will finally be allowed to return to their home countries of India and Sri Lanka. Attorneys for the city of Baltimore had said they should stay in the U.S. to be deposed in ongoing civil litigation. But a U.S. district judge confirmed they can go home so long as they are still available for depositions. The crew members had stayed on the Dali for weeks after the deadly collision, even when the experts carried out a controlled demolition of the bridge to free the vessel. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen announced new sanctions today against 8 members of a Mexican drug cartel as part of the Biden administration's broader push to address the ongoing opioid crisis. The group is notorious for manufacturing and distributing fentanyl, as well as other illegal drugs. Speaking in Georgia today, Yellen said the Treasury Department is treating the cartel like it would a business, freezing its members' assets and cutting them off financially.
They rely on access to banking systems and to the U.S. dollar to make payroll and finance purchases. And this means the Treasury Department has a unique ability to disrupt and degrade their operations.
At that same appearance, Secretary Yellen defended President Biden's tariffs on Chinese goods, including electric vehicles and semiconductors, and she criticized former President Trump's tariff proposals as being too broad, saying they would hurt American consumers and businesses. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average added nearly 300 points to close above 39,000. The Nasdaq slipped from its recent records, giving back 140 points. The S&P 500 gave back nearly 14 points. And actor Donald Sutherland has died. Jeffrey Brown has more on the career of one of the industry's most versatile actors.
Donald Sutherland's career spanned 6 decades, with appearances in nearly 200 films and TV shows, and the widest possible ugly. He loved what he did and did what he loved. Donald Sutherland was 88 years old. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown.
Still to come on the NewsHour, a community in New Mexico offers a unique model of how to live off the grid and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. How some Scotch whiskey producers are aiming to go carbon neutral. And new book recommendations to add to your summer reading list. Before we go, we mentioned it last night, but it's worth repeating. We heard from some of you that your DVR recordings of the NewsHour have mysteriously stopped. We've ever so slightly renamed the program PBS NewsHour with a space between news and hour as part of our recent rebranding on air and online. This change is throwing off some scheduled DVR recordings, so please do reset. Our apologies for the inconvenience, and thanks for your online feedback. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The UN Human Rights Office has accused Israel of systematically violating the laws of war by using heavy bombs to destroy civilian infrastructure in densely populated areas of Gaza. In a new report, the UN office examined 6 Israeli attacks that targeted residential buildings, a school, refugee camps, and a market. The UN verified at least 218 people died in those 6 attacks. Meanwhile, Navi Pillay, the chair of a separate UN inquiry into the war, testified before the UN Human Rights Council.
Israeli authorities are responsible for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and violations of international humanitarian and human rights law, including extermination, intentionally directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects, murder or willful killing, using starvation as a method of war, forcible transfer, gender persecution targeting Palestinian men and boys, sexual and gender-based violence amounting to torture, and cruel or inhuman treatment.
During her testimony, the UN's Navi Pillay also accused Hamas and Islamic Jihad of committing war crimes. The UN's findings are being shared with the International Criminal Court. This comes as the official death toll in Gaza has topped 37,000.
Quote, Hamas is an idea. Hamas is a party. It's rooted in the hearts of the people. Anyone who thinks we can eliminate Hamas is wrong, the IDF spokesperson said.
Meanwhile, officials in
Tensions continuing to escalate between Israel and the Lebanese group Hezbollah. On Wednesday, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah warned his forces could strike anywhere inside Israel. Nasrallah also threatened to target Cyprus if it allows Israel to use its air bases to attack Lebanon. His warning came a day after Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, threatened to wage an all-out war against Hezbollah. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Vietnam after making his first visit to North Korea. Activists sprayed orange paint on the ancient megaliths of Stonehenge. The protesters are demanding the UK government sign a legally binding treaty to phase out all fossil fuels by 2030. French police have arrested 11 people in the Pacific territory of New Caledonia, including the head of the local independence movement, following weeks of protests over voting reforms pushed by France. Thousands of extra French police officers remain on the archipelago. Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron agreed to suspend the reforms. In Sudan, at least 3 people were killed on Wednesday when fighters from the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, shelled a hospital in Omdurman. Doctors Without Borders reported the shelling injured 27 people. Meanwhile, at the UN, Sudan accused the United Arab Emirates of fueling Sudan's civil war by arming the RSF.
In an interview, Rear Admiral
In news from Kenya, more than 200 protesters were arrested Tuesday in Nairobi in protest against proposed tax hikes. Police fired tear gas at the crowd and arrested observers from Amnesty International. In response to the protests, Kenyan lawmakers have dropped parts of the controversial bill, including a proposed tax hike on bread. The Biden administration's approved selling 1,000 armed drones to Taiwan as part of a new $360 million weapons package. The sale includes 720 lightweight Switchblade one-way attack drones that have also been used in Ukraine's war against Russia. In Colorado, the shooter who killed 5 people and injured more than a dozen others at an LGBTQIA nightclub in 2022 has pleaded guilty to 74 federal charges, including hate crimes. Prosecutors agreed not to pursue the death penalty in exchange for the deal, which will see the shooter sentenced to 55 concurrent life sentences without the possibility of parole. The shooter's already serving consecutive life sentences after pleading guilty to state murder charges last year. Louisiana's Republican Governor Jeff Landry has signed legislation requiring the 10 Commandments be displayed in the class images of Israel's war on Gaza. False reports that Noam Chomsky had died went viral online on Tuesday. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, Democracy.
Elected in November. The 2 candidates will hold their first debate on July 27th. We'll have more on Biden's immigration plan later in
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. New York City firefighters battling two major fires today in this searing heat. Also, Amtrak suspending service for hours. Passengers stuck from Philadelphia to New York City to New Haven. And the passenger jet coming within 500 feet of the ground. Air traffic control asking, are you okay? First tonight, the life-threatening heat across this country. Tonight, more than 127 million Americans under heat alerts as we come on the air. New York City firefighters in brutal temperatures battling those massive fires in Manhattan and the Bronx. Philadelphia issuing a heat emergency tonight. Fires breaking out along the New Jersey Turnpike during the commute home. And Amtrak passengers stuck for hours, service halted from Philadelphia to New York to Connecticut. Our team on it all tonight, and Ginger Z with the latest heat forecast. And now these storms we're watching from Detroit right into parts of the Northeast. We're also following the deadly fires in New Mexico. At least 1,400 homes and businesses destroyed. Tonight, President Biden approving a major disaster declaration for the state. The scare on board a Southwest passenger jet, the plane suddenly dropping to about 525 feet above the ground, coming close to a school. Those air traffic controllers asking the pilots if they were okay. Tonight, the USC student accused in a deadly stabbing, killing a man allegedly breaking into a car. What the district attorney has now decided. Tonight, the first law of its kind in the U.S., Louisiana, now requiring public classrooms to display the Ten Commandments from elementary school to high school in a large, easy-to-read font. And what the governor there declared when signing this into law. The race for the White House tonight, and just in this evening, what Donald Trump is now saying about debating President Biden. The graphic images here tonight, the two bicyclists who survived this. They are struck from behind by an SUV, the driver charged with DWI, and the warning from authorities. The new concern tonight about those popular weight loss drugs being used by so many, what they want you to know. And health officials warning about a record number of mosquitoes carrying West Nile virus and where they're seeing this. And tonight here we celebrate actor Donald Sutherland, from MASH to the Hunger Games. The tributes pouring in tonight from his son Kiefer Sutherland to Michael Douglas.
Tonight, Tropical Storm Alberto turning deadly as it slams Texas with heavy rain and flooding. The remnants of Alberto over Mexico after making landfall there and killing at least 4. The heavy rain and storm surge flooding the Texas coast. It comes as brutal heat refuses to let up. 65 million on alert. And in New Mexico, the massive dust storms and deadly wildfires burning out of control. Also tonight, the manhunt for a suspect wanted for multiple murders in 2 states, where he was caught today. A close call for a Southwest plane, triggering urgent warnings after descending to just 500 feet over a suburb. Why was it so low? The train chaos in the Northeast, why Amtrak service was suspended from Philadelphia to Connecticut. The first debate just 1 week away. New details of the Biden-Trump showdown, where they'll be positioned on stage, and who will get the last word. The new warning about popular weight loss drugs, the dangerous counterfeits on the market, and saving the whales. The nearly 3,000-mile mission to rescue 2 majestic belugas from Ukraine's war zone.
This is NBC.
Begin with a brand new swing state poll from Emerson College. Take a look at your screen. In Arizona, Donald Trump is up by 4. In Georgia, Donald Trump is also up by 4. In Wisconsin, Trump is up by 3. In Nevada, Trump is up by 3 again. In Pennsylvania, he's up by 2. In Michigan, he's up by 1. And in the traditionally very, very blue state of Minnesota, Trump and Biden are tied, 45-45. In other words, according to a pretty reputable poll, Trump is ahead in every single battleground state and tied in Minnesota. Added 2 recent polls from Virginia showing a dead-even race in the Commonwealth, and pretty good news for Donald Trump today. However, I do caution everybody. We are 137 days away until Election Day, and that is an eternity. In terms of politics, a lot can happen. Early voting begins in Pennsylvania in only 88 short days, and all the other states roll out after that. However, it gives us a snapshot into the election today. And what are people seeing? They're seeing Biden's policies they're a disaster. Americans see that their president is a cognitive mess, and they're not buying, these are cheap fake videos. They're not buying that lie. It shows that a weaponized Department of Justice isn't even working out the way Democrats had planned on it working out. And to make matters worse for Joe Biden, well, he now has the weakest poll numbers among women since John Kerry in 2004. And Joe is down by double digits among American men. But again, it's still a tight race. And that will likely be decided by 2 or 3 states where the polls are well within the margin of error. Take nothing for granted. So, make no mistake, the stakes for next Thursday's CNN presidential debate are extremely high.
Biden World Democratic Party, and they say this is a hugely important moment for the president.
Van, how big of a moment is this?
This is the entire election, as far as I'm concerned. The entire world will be watching. If you are a carbon-based life form, you're going to be watching. If you've got a functioning brainstem, you're going to be watching. Because if Biden goes out there and messes up, it's game over. If he walks out there and a week later he's lower in the polls, it's panic in the party.
Because if Biden goes
I don't necessarily agree with Van Jones. While we definitely have accurately documented Biden's very troubling cognitive struggles for years, we've been way ahead of the curve. Don't expect that Joe Biden that we see on a daily basis to show up at that debate. This brings us to the legend of Jacked Up Joe. On a rare occasion during an important speech, Biden's demeanor became very different. The mumbling, the bumbling, the stumbling, the fumbling got replaced with screaming, and the confusion was masked by aggression. His heart rate was up, his eyes were bulging, his speech was fast, his behavior was weird, kind of like a kid who had coffee for the first time. Jacked Up Joe last appeared at the State of the Union address. That was back in March. We haven't seen it since. Now, we don't know if it's caffeine, adrenaline, I don't know, or something else. But next Thursday, I fully expect a return of Jacked Up Joe. Now, of course, if Biden is able to string 2 sentences together, Joe's friends in state-run media like MSDNC, fake news CNN, he survived. That's a victory. He won. The Humpty Dumptys of the world, they'll be dancing in the street. Fake Jake Tapper and Dana Bash will probably be sharing high fives behind the scenes because probably half the questions, let's talk about January 6th, let's talk about 2020, let's talk about democracy in peril, let's talk about anything other than the issues that would actually matter to people. And then, of course, we'll have Jacked Up Joe. He will fade back into oblivion, and then mumbling, bumbling, stumbling Joe will return. We'll see what happens. Apparently, for the next 7 days and 7 nights, the Biden team.
Back into oblivion, and then mumbling, bumbling, stumbling Joe will return. We'll see what happens. Apparently, for the next 7 days and 7 nights, the Biden team, they are busy summoning up Jacked Up Joe, and they're doing it in the woods of Camp David. According to the White House, Biden will spend the entire week prepping for the CNN presidential debate. It's only 90 minutes. There are no public events, no meetings, nothing else is scheduled. The President of the United States will simply suspend his pretty important day job for a week to prepare for this debate. Wouldn't it be great to have a president who could actually walk and chew gum at the same time? I know I'm asking for a lot. Someone that doesn't need an entire week of preparation for a 90-minute discussion. Now, we spend many, many hours prepping for this show every day, and many hours doing 3 hours of radio every day. I don't know if I could spend an entire week preparing for a 1 hour or 2 hour show. It's kind of bizarre. The fact that the mob, the media, is pretending that this is business as usual is predictable, but it's repulsive as usual. Now, will either of CNN's far-left moderators, they're really liberal talk show hosts, ask Biden why he needed an entire week of solitude to prepare for the debate? The chances of that are next to zero. We know it's a stacked debate. We know it's 3-on-1 against Donald Trump. And yet Democrats are still noticeably petrified that Biden will embarrass the entire party. Why is that? Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
It is the first day of summer and the first day that the House of Commons isn't sitting. So leaders are hitting the road, taking their message to the barbecue.
Tonight, chilling, never-before-seen video of the nation's capital, shot before the deadliest terror attacks on U.S. soil. Why 9/11 families want you to see it.
deadly fires on France 24 and France24.com.
Hello, welcome to Daybreak here on France 24. I'm Yinka Ietade. The headlines. The US's top diplomat sounds the alarm over the Lebanon-Israel border, warning Israeli officials to avoid conflict. That caution coming as tensions escalate dramatically, with both sides threatening to open a new front in the war in the Middle East. Washington set to rush shipments of air defense systems to Ukraine by delaying deliveries to other countries. The US saying there's a critical need for Patriot interceptor missiles on the front line as Russia accelerates attacks. And the latest polls ahead of parliamentary elections in France show a clear lead for the far-right National Rally. Forecasts predicting the party could secure over a third of the vote in the first round, while the leftist Popular Front and President Macron's Together bloc trail behind. We begin here in France, where the latest polls ahead of legislative elections later this month currently show that the far-right National Rally is leading the race. According to a survey by IFOP for the outlet Le Figaro, the party is set to garner 34% of the vote in the first round. Trailing behind in second place is a coalition of left-wing parties, the Popular Front, with 29%, while President Macron's centrist Together bloc is predicted to secure 22%. These latest stats show that the Popular Front is making gains, as Sophie Lamotte explains.
The balance of power is still in favour of the National Rally.
War in Ukraine now. Washington says it will accelerate shipments of air defense systems to the war-torn country. The announcement from the White House comes as NATO member Romania said it too would send Patriot missiles to Kyiv. The White House says that the situation on the ground in Ukraine is so urgent that it's redirecting shipments of the interceptor missiles that were initially meant for other countries. Monty Francis has the details.
This is the latest result of Russian shelling in the missiles to be delivered in the coming months.
We go to Hanoi now, where the Vietnamese president has been hosting his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. During his state visit there, Putin didn't rule out the possibility of Russia sending arms to North Korea. Reacting to the Russian leader's comments, Washington said it's, quote, incredibly concerning. While Putin's statement comes just a day after the two sides signed a mutual defense pact. In that deal, they each pledged to use all available means to provide immediate military assistance in the event the other is attacked. Putin also warned South Korea against sending arms to Ukraine. Take a listen.
Those who send these missiles to Ukraine think that
NATO is set to have a new leader. The Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is poised to take over the job from the current Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg. The path was cleared for Rutte after the last remaining candidate running against him withdrew from the running.
for months, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has been the leading candidate to replace Jens Stoltenberg as the head of NATO. With strong backing from a majority of the 32 members of the military alliance, there were two holdouts, Romania and Hungary, who have since come around. Hungarian President Viktor Orban wanted to opt out of some NATO plans for Ukraine, including having the alliance play a greater role in training Ukrainian troops. After receiving those assurances from Rutte, Orban got on board. The final holdout, Romania, whose president had suggested that NATO needed a renewal of perspectives.
The US's top diplomat, Antony Blinken, has cautioned Israeli officials to avoid further escalation with Lebanon. In a meeting, the Secretary of State underscored the importance of reaching a diplomatic resolution that allows families to return to their homes. Fears that a new front there could open in the war in the Middle East rose further Thursday. It follows comments from Hezbollah that none of Israel would be spared in a full-blown conflict. That after Israel said it had approved plans for a Lebanon offensive. Well, Thursday also saw Hezbollah fire dozens of rockets into northern Israel. That was in retaliation for a deadly airstrike in South Lebanon that Israel said killed a Hezbollah operative. The militant group also claims several other attacks on Israeli troops and positions. Amir Maxwell takes a look now at reaction from both sides of the border.
In Lebanon and Israel, in the latest attempt to de-escalate tensions.
Next, thousands of people have been taken to the streets of the Kenyan capital to protest against new tax proposals from the government. Riot police threw tear gas and opened water cannons to disperse crowds. Protesters say the government has gone back on its pledge to reduce taxes and lower the cost of living. They're calling on lawmakers to vote against the proposals. Caitlin Kelly reports.
Youths don't sleep, the struggle, but young Kenyans are yet to be convinced.
Les Bleus are gearing up to face off with the Netherlands tonight at the Euros. Whether star player Kylian Mbappe will join the French team on the pitch remains in doubt after the captain broke his nose in the team's opening game. Well, Mbappe was seen training with a mask with French national colours, but he has been banned from wearing it under UEFA rules. Sophie Lamotz fills us now in on all the sporting action.
The team won the Euro.
Now, he was known for his roles in Don't Look Now, MASH and The Hunger Games. The actor Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88 after a long illness. He appeared in more than 190 films and TV shows during his career that spanned more than 6 decades. Caitlin Kelly takes a look back at his life now. And finally, after all that heavy news, I think it's time we relax because it's International Yoga Day. While hundreds of people have been gathering in New York's Times Square to mark the day, the annual event began with 3 yogis who came together to welcome the summer solstice with yoga in Times Square at sunrise back in June of 2003. And they've kept the tradition for the last 2 decades. Well, that's it from us on Daybreak. Do stay tuned.
.au.
Today, a Sydney bartender who uploaded hundreds of photographs of women he knew to a pornography website, jailed for 5.5 years. Authorities investigate how a man who allegedly shot dead a Queensland woman still had a gun after his firearms licence was revoked. An Australian among hundreds of pilgrims who have died in scorching heat while completing the Hajj. And from Hawkeye to President Snow, the actor who entertained generations, Donald Sutherland, dies at the age of 88. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Gemma Vaness. A Sydney bartender who uploaded hundreds of photographs of women he knew to a pornography website will spend at least 5.5 years behind bars. Ruby Cornish has been following the story and was in court for today's sentencing.
Pretty extraordinary scenes here at the Sydney Downing Centre today. Andrew Thomas Haler, 38-year-old Sydney bartender.
Saturday on CNA.
This is Asia Now.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 a.m. in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Yasmin Yonkers. At this hour, thousands of pilgrims suffer heat stress in Mecca as temperatures rise to more than 50 degrees Celsius. Reports say at least 1,000 people have died, but that toll could rise further when official figures are released. Searing heat waves are also to be blamed for hundreds of deaths across Asia and Europe. Experts warn the brutal temperatures are a sign that summer this year could surpass 2023 as the warmest on record. And Russia's Vladimir Putin leaves Asia after strengthening ties with allies. A dozen deals signed with Vietnam on energy cooperation and civil nuclear projects. He has not ruled out more weapons for North Korea. Well, the death toll from this year's Hajj has reportedly exceeded 1,000 people and more than
Hundreds of Kenyans took to the streets of the capital, Nairobi, and other cities across the country on Thursday. They were protesting against proposed tax hikes they say will raise the cost of living for people already struggling to make ends meet. Some of the proposed new taxes were scrapped on Tuesday, including on bread.
We are not going to sit at home so that they are going to pass another finance bill without our approval. We are going to add our voice to this, and we need them to understand that we are not okaying what they want to force on us.
Kenya is led by poverty. We have no education. Most of our people are unlearned. They cannot write, they cannot read. And the government still wants to pull away the budget of education, of healthcare services, of our teachers. I mean, do they want us to keep on remaining illiterate so that they can benefit from it?
Police were out in full force using tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds. The finance bill is in its second reading in Parliament, with a vote scheduled for Monday. President William Ruto has defended the tax increases, saying the government needs to reduce its reliance on borrowing.
Celebrations rock many cities in South Africa following the swearing-in of President Cyril Ramaphosa for a second term. In his first speech after swearing in, Ramaphosa welcomed the unity government, while at the same time promising to address the fundamental issues affecting South Africans, like unemployment.
Let us not be afraid of what this government of national unity is going to be all about. We want to create jobs.
Where Ramaphosa as well were meant to reassure an already economically strained population, the new administration could prove challenging to lead. In the streets, a few South Africans say they are hoping for the best from this unity government.
Ideologically, we're not the same. But now, when it comes to governance, governance is governance, service delivery is service delivery. So let's focus on that, go back to our people, because our people need service delivery at the end of the day. So hence, this GNU is something new, we'll see.
If all political parties hold each other's hands, we will go forward, we will see change in our country, because for so many years, ANC have been there alone, but now when they are united, I think there will be change and we will see a brighter future, and our economy, I think it will rise.
Major players such as the Democratic Alliance and the Inkatha Freedom Party have already joined the coalition, and others like the Patriotic Alliance, the Good Party and the Pan-Africanist Congress are expected to follow to join the ANC.
One day after a military ammunition depot in Chad's capital exploded, the neighborhood next to the depot still bears the marks of the incident. On Wednesday, 9 people were confirmed dead. Residents of the neighborhood around the Chadian Army's weapons depot were still in shock. The house was destroyed and the boys' room was set on fire. Nothing was saved. As you can see, it's like this because of the shells that hit the house. Authorities called on residents to stay out of the area, which was taken over by security forces gathering the scattered artillery shells. The government spokesperson said 46 people were being treated for various injuries. At one point we thought that it was over for us. We don't know what happened. There were large caliber weapons everywhere. All the windows are broken, the glass is shattered. We asked the government to help us. There was a lot of material damage and bodily injuries as well. The explosions lit up the sky as thick smoke covered the clouds in the Central African nation late Tuesday. The cause of the fire was not immediately clear, and President Mahamat Déby Itno said an investigation would be conducted.
People queuing at the Nuit du Fourvière open-air festival in the French city of Lyon. They're waiting to see Gabon-born singer extraordinaire Pamela Badjogo. A career on the rise after going solo in 2016, she was invited to open for Angelique Kidjo. I've released a new album called Year, like Letting Go, and right now we're in the middle of touring. Not all artists get the chance to do this, so I'm really grateful. There's a pleasure in sharing your music with an audience that doesn't necessarily know you. Artist and mother, Pamela is proof that this combination is far from impossible. A vocal advocate for women's rights, she's pleased that the world of show business has evolved to meet the demands that come with being both. That's one of the things we denounced, and today I'm very happy that most programmers understand that you can be a mother and an artist at the same time. So if I can't do my sound check at 2 p.m. because I need to drop my daughter off at school, they understand. And that's also one of the victories of feminism. An activist, Pamela Badjogo, is patron of the Karama School for the Education of Girls in Mali and ambassador for Fair Ministre, a French collective that supports women after domestic abuse and sexual assault.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.